Joining us from Washington, D.C., criminal defense attorney Joe Scrofano. Joe, good to see you. First of all, your reaction to this verdict, surprised or what do you think?
I wouldn't say surprised. I think it's interesting the counts that the jury did ultimately convict on up against the counts they acquitted him of. I think it did surprise some people. A lot of folks, I think, were thinking there were some issues with Jessica Mann's testimony. But in the end, it turns out that they maybe have looked at Annabella Sciorra's and didn't quite think that her testimony proved the more substantial charges beyond a reasonable doubt.
So, you think timing was tough for Annabella Sciorra? 27 years? I mean, no matter what, that's a long time.
I think that certainly could have had an impact. It seemed like she gave pretty compelling, consistent, straightforward testimony. There could have been some type of horse trading going on among the jurors. You got to understand, these are folks who are taking all this time out of their lives, and they get into these deliberations. And I think, you have some strong personalities in there. Some people, dig in their heels, and it can end up sort of becoming a compromise type situation that may have occurred here. You just never know for sure.
Yeah, and the jury knew that the top two counts, the most severe, were the predatory sexual assault counts, I'm sure. And yeah, to your point, it could have very well have been all right, let's compromise here. And that's part of the system. It does happen. They're not supposed to do it, but that is part of the system. How much do you think the Me Too movement bled into this courtroom, into this courthouse? And was it a factor, do you think, in the verdict?
I think it's hard to expect jurors not to be influenced by, the culture, the media, things that are happening outside of the courtroom. I think it's certainly possible this could have had an impact here. Again, I think, my thing with Weinstein has just been the sheer volume of allegations. And it's not to say that anytime someone makes an allegation, you just accept it as true. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I fight against what I see are oftentimes false allegations that people make, or see people in the criminal justice system use it as a sword, not as a shield. But when it piles up like that, and when folks are hearing it, when they know about it through social media, when it's someone who's has such a high profile position and has played such a significant role in the movement, I think it's hard to say that it didn't have an impact. But that's how our system is built, is that you're to be judged by your fellow citizens. The founders set it up that way, and I don't think that there's any expectation that they're not going to be influenced in any way. But in this case, there's just so many allegations.
Oh, yeah, 87 in the court of public opinion. You have 87, and then you had six different people coming in when you had the Molinos and the supporting cast. The jury heard from a lot of them. What about the defense is hoping that because the predatory sexual assault charges came back not guilty, that their client technically is eligible for parole or a bond here during the next year, this next phase, going into the Los Angeles phase of this second act, if you will. But what's the reality of that? I mean, they claim that they're looking into it, they're already filing. Is there any chance that an appellate judge is going to say, oh yeah, let Harvey Weinstein out on bail during this period of time?
I'm certainly not an expert on New York bail law. It is definitely an uphill battle in any criminal case to try to have your client released pending sentencing, released pending appeal. I imagine they're going to throw every possible legal argument. He's going to expend every possible resource in order to try and accomplish that. But especially for a charge, that has a maximum penalty of 25 years, it's extremely difficult to get someone on bond pending appeal in any serious felony charge. And I think the Court of Appeals the Court of Appeals of New York are probably no different than they are out here in the District of Columbia, and how they view that as something difficult. I mean, the way the system is set up is to say, there's got to be some finality here. And while he certainly is entitled to an appeal under the Constitution, and it is one of his rights, it's been really watered down. It's really difficult for any criminal defendant, and I think especially with a high stakes situation like this, I think it's
with the world watching
likely.
too. Yeah, it's a complete long shot. Reaction has been coming in,
and I'll just say sometimes having a high profile client can actually backfire in that sense, because the court, the prosecution, the system may in some cases overcorrect because they don't want to be perceived as having, giving special favors to high profile defendants. And it may even be in some instances where any regular person going through the system might get some kind of benefit or some break. The high profile or the wealthier client may not, because the system doesn't want to look like they're giving some special treatment to the defendant.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you that his status, I mean, imagine if he is let out, the outcry and the uproar that would ensue would be deafening. And talking about that, the reaction from all around the world about this verdict, we've been bringing it to you throughout the day here on Court TV. I want to just read a couple of reactions from some of the people that were involved intimately with this, of the Me Too movement. Rosie Perez, she was part of this trial. She came in and she backed up her friend Annabella Sciorra. She tweeted today, "Harvey Weinstein has been handcuffed and taken to jail. Gutted for my dear friend Annabella Sciorra, who told the truth. Yet I congratulate her and all who came forward for their bravery. This is not enough, but survivors, take courage. This is still a great win. Congrats, Joan Aluzzi." Ashley Judd, one of the original members of the Me Too movement, in that she came forward bravely and accused Harvey Weinstein early on, said, "For the women who testified in this case and walked through traumatic hell, you did a public service to girls and women everywhere. Thank you. Convict Harvey Weinstein guilty." That sentiment, this wasn't about two women or three women in a New York courtroom. Joe, this was about a movement, wasn't it not? This is a change. Just because, and we heard from Cyrus Vance today saying, it's over. You can't attack, the world has changed. You can't attack a witness the way the defense did about their behavior following an alleged sexual assault. Jurors aren't going to buy it. Do you buy that the landscape has changed now, and defense attorneys have to be very careful what they do when cross-examining a potential sexual assault survivor?
Well, I think you have to look at each case based on the facts and allegations. I mean, look, it's not sometimes the most tasteful thing that defense lawyers have to do, to take an aggressive cross-examination against an alleged victim in a trial. However, you have to understand from the perspective of the defense lawyer, if you don't show significant or authentic sort of indignation at someone who you believe, or you're presenting to the jury as someone who you believe is making false allegations against your client, it can be difficult to sort of play that in a softer or more in a softer and less accusatory form of cross-examination. If you are trying to convey to the jury that the witnesses are lying, then you should be appropriately indignant, and you should show that. Now, having said that, I tend not to believe in the philosophy of trying to, they call it, cut the witness's throat, or, to just, have this attacking cross-examination. I think oftentimes that can backfire. It just sort of, you just have to look at the facts of each case, how the allegations unfold, how the government's case unfolds. And again, as the defense lawyer, what it is that you're trying to convey to the jury. If you think someone is blatantly lying and making accusations against your client, then you may approach it that way.
Sure, yeah,
but
and I don't think anybody.
It's oftentimes not effective to do it.
I don't think anybody's, could realistically, although Cyrus Vance seemed to be a little bit in his press conference, I don't think realistically you could fault this defense team. I think Harvey Weinstein's defense team came loaded with ammunition through research and did a very good job, a fantastic job under the circumstances. The world was watching, let's face it. More reaction, Ronan Farrow, journalist, today tweeted, "Today's outcome in Harvey Weinstein's New York trial is the result of the decisions of multiple women to come forward to journalists and to prosecutors at great personal cost and risk. Please keep these women in your thoughts." Today, actress Mira Sorvino, who's been very outspoken, writes, "The beginning of justice. More to come, my sisters. Weinstein guilty." And actress Ellen Barkin, who we did see in the courthouse supporting her friend Rosie Perez. And Annabella Sciorra tweeted, "Right now, convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein is sitting handcuffed in a car on his way to prison." Actually headed to jail and then eventually will be on to prison. Joe, what do you think is an appropriate sentence here? The max would be 29, minimum would be 5. Where do you think Judge Burke's going to come in here? What typically would happen in a case like this?
Well, I haven't sat through. I didn't sit through the whole trial, but I think you can expect a couple things at sentencing. One, substantial prison time. 2, I think you can expect to see both counts be sentenced consecutively, meaning the sentences aren't going to be served at the same time. It'll be one set of time on top of another. I think you'll expect to see a lot more kind of outpour at the sentencing, trying to show how this is a habitual issue with Harvey Weinstein. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that didn't go in front of the jury because the judge kept it out. But at sentencing, a lot of those rules don't apply. A lot of this stuff becomes relevant at sentencing. The prosecutors are going to have a lot more ability and flexibility to put forward evidence as to Mr. Weinstein's, engaging in this kind of conduct over and over and over again. So, I don't have a magic 8-ball to predict here, but I would suspect substantial prison time, consecutive sentences, and an outpouring of resources, arguments, and evidence put in front of the sentencing judge for a substantial sentence.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm kind of operating under the assumption that the prosecutors are going to ask for the max penalty on each count.
Absolutely. I think my magic 8-ball says trouble ahead for Harvey Weinstein. We'll have to wait and see. Joe.
That's right. And that's
Scrofano.
right. And I would just say, too, the fact that he was locked up pending sentencing, I think, is some sign of what's to come.
Yeah. All right, Joe Scrofano, thank you for your time and your insight. Joe Scrofano, the criminal defense attorney, coming to us from Washington, D.C. Tonight, we're going to step aside, take a break. When we come back later this next hour, we're going to talk live with 2 of the members of Harvey Weinstein's defense team, Arthur Adala and Diana Fabi Sampson. That and much more when we return. You're watching Court TV. Stay with us.